Wendy, you really are a shameless, bad daughter-in-law. I was looking forward to this trip with Tyler, just the two of us. Please, don't rain on my parade. It's cheeky to go on an overseas trip without paying a penny. You should just go home. Although the overseas trip was planned at the request of my husband, Tyler, the mother-in-law starts to nag me as soon as Tyler is away. Having been told so much, there's nothing else to do. I'll go home. What happens to them next is none of my business. My name is Wendy. I work for a foreign travel company specializing in overseas travel. Planning overseas weddings and honeymoons is my main job, and I can work remotely, so I have been working from home mostly after getting married. I married Tyler 4 years ago, but honestly, it hasn't been going well. Tyler is a person who always tries to look better than he is. Or rather, he overestimates himself to the extent that he doesn't even realize where he starts exaggerating. He loves to show off, is extravagant with money, and spends all his salary on himself. He has never contributed a single penny to our household finances. Before we married, he was generous with me, and I never thought he was stingy, but he turned out to be the type who doesn't feed the fish once caught. I've always wanted to keep separate finances, even after getting married, so I cover my expenses with my salary. It feels unfair to pay for Tyler's share of the rent and utilities, but he hardly comes home, so I've managed to cope. However, there's one thing about money that infuriates me. Tyler seems to go out of his way for his mother, who lives far away. I only go with him to visit during the Christmas holidays, but Tyler often returns to his mother's home, sweetens his mother up with cheap gifts, and conveniently receives a lot more allowance. I have a younger brother, but my relationship with my mother is quite clear-cut, so Tyler's close relationship with his mother seemed bizarre to me. My mother-in-law dislikes me. At the beginning of our marriage, I complained several times about Tyler not contributing to our living expenses, but she wouldn't believe it because she's convinced he's the best son.
I'm not contributing to the household finances? That can't be true.
Believing her son's words, she scolded me as a wasteful wife who couldn't manage the money she received. And my mother-in-law doesn't understand the concept of remote work. It's probably because the times are different, but she insists that it's impossible to work from home. And no matter how many times I explain, she thinks I'm a full-time housewife. If you have time to complain about Tyler's salary, go out and work to make ends meet. You don't have children to take care of. She calls me and barks at me like this every time Tyler visits her home. I can easily imagine Tyler bad-mouthing me at his mother's home. The misunderstanding benefits Tyler, who ignores how much I am criticized. Previously, I exploded. Why do I have to be said to be supported by you, who doesn't contribute a single penny to the household when I'm working full-time?
Get along with each other between women. Why can't you explain that? It's your fault for not communicating properly,
he said. It's because you're lying. Your mother doesn't want to listen to me at all. Please, Tyler, make sure. After persistently pressing, he threw a signed divorce paper at me. Looking back, it was a good chance to get a divorce, but I was so shocked that Tyler always carried a divorce paper with him that I couldn't understand why I had to be the one to be told to get a divorce and I missed the chance. As things calmed down and life returned to normal, discussing divorce with Tyler would not be easy. Divorce is said to be much harder than getting married, but for Tyler it feels hundreds, thousands of times harder. Just imagining it makes me tired, and in the end, I listened to his side because it seemed better than now. But by not agreeing to the divorce, Tyler made a big misunderstanding. Like his mother, Tyler, who has strong misconceptions, thought I was madly in love with him and couldn't leave, making him even more arrogant. Tyler's emotional abuse gets worse day by day. Witnessing it makes discussing divorce even more daunting. In this vicious cycle, my ability to ignore Tyler's behavior has been improving rapidly. This year's Easter holidays, combining paid leaves, could make it a 9-day consecutive holiday, and before the holiday, information about travel spots and recommended destinations overflowed. At our house, Tyler was working according to the calendar without long holidays, and I was working for a foreign company, unrelated to Easter holidays. During the holiday, Tyler went back to his mother's home, but as soon as he returned, he said,
Let's go on an overseas trip.
When I asked him what he meant by suddenly, he seemed to have heard from his mother during his visit that a cousin was on an overseas trip.
Taking an overseas trip on a 9-day holiday? That's sneaky.
He was jealous and angry.
I want to do something good for my mother sometimes. Wendy, arrange this trip.
Most likely, the mother-in-law had hinted that she wanted to go too. Simplistic Tyler had easily fallen for it. It was too low level and I was dumbfounded. That's impossible on such short notice. Neither you nor your mother even have passports. Isn't a domestic trip okay? I suggested, but he was adamant.
No, it has to be an overseas trip. Get the passports arranged too.
He must want to boast to his colleagues. When Tyler's pride shows, he won't back down easily. What about the language? Neither you nor your mother can speak anything but English.
Huh? You'll be there, won't you?
What? Am I going to? Indeed, I can manage conversations in Spanish, French, German, and Korean to not struggle on trips. But the thought of accompanying Tyler and his mother on a trip seemed troublesome. From his current tone, it was clear that I would be forced to act as a guide and interpreter. I have work, so it's impossible. Why not go on a tour? I gently refused, but he insisted.
Why should I have to go with strangers? You can work from the travel destination since you're remote. I'm taking you with me, so stop complaining. Just hurry up and book a trip that satisfies me and my mother. It's your job, so you can do it quickly. Show some respect for once.
He forcibly pushed through. I'm tired of Tyler's selfishness. I was completely disheartened while planning this unenthusiastic trip, but as I worked on it, a brilliant idea struck me. It was something only I, with my experience in travel planning, could pull off. Imagining what would happen next, I couldn't help but feel excited, and I devised a perfect plan for Tyler and his mother, leaving no room for error. On the day of the overseas trip, unaware of my efforts, the mother-in-law was childishly excited. It's like a dream to go on an overseas trip in business class. That's my boy. Tyler, shamelessly taking credit for my work, said,
I want to do something good for you now and then. It was quite tough planning this amidst work.
But you didn't move a muscle, did you? I thought to myself. Thank you, Tyler. I'm happy you're my son. After completing the departure procedures, the two of them, overly excited, started moving around energetically at the gate. I tried to keep up but lost sight of them along the way. I figured they would show up at boarding time, so I decided to go ahead to the boarding lobby. However, being their first time traveling internationally, they probably didn't know the ropes. They failed to show up at the lobby even at the boarding time and ended up being paged by airport staff.
It's Wendy's fault for not showing us the gate.
You have embarrassed us by leaving us behind, they said, shifting the blame onto me without a hint of remorse. In the plane, they were relatively calm, but still summoned flight attendants frequently and snored loudly, which was both annoying and embarrassing. Several hours later, we finally arrived at our destination. Next, a shuttle bus from the hotel will come, so please don't wander around like you did when we left, I preemptively told them.
Yeah.
They replied nonchalantly, but once the immigration procedures were completed, Tyler suddenly turned pale, handed his luggage to me, and rushed to the bathroom saying,
My stomach hurts.
Here we go again. I sighed and sat down on a nearby bench, only for the mother-in-law to start berating me. Wendy, you really are a shameless, bad daughter-in-law. I was looking forward to this trip with Tyler, just the two of us. Please, don't rain on our parade. It's cheeky to go on an overseas trip without paying a penny. You should just go home. She probably thought she could nag me while Tyler was away. She wouldn't stop nagging. Having been told so much, there was nothing else to do. I'll go home. What happens to them next is none of my business. I was pleased that the opportunity to leave came much sooner than expected. Is that okay? Good or bad, I can't enjoy myself with you here. I see. That's unfortunate. Understood. Then enjoy your time without me. I'll be heading back. With that, I stood up, took only my carry-on, and started walking away. The mother-in-law, thinking she was merely being spiteful, probably didn't expect me to actually leave. She looked utterly dumbfounded. I had to suppress my laughter as I walked away. Fortunately, I was able to change my return flight ticket on the spot, and I truly headed back to the US. The long flight back was physically demanding, but considering being manipulated by that pair further, this was an endurable hardship. Originally, I had planned to leave them behind during the trip and return home alone. Despite always being domineering and utterly ungrateful, they relied on me as if I were a crutch. I hadn't expected the opportunity to come right upon arrival, but wanting to get away from them every second, I took immediate action. I wonder what they will do now in this foreign country where they are not accustomed and don't speak the language. Just imagining Tyler, who loves to show off, panicking in front of his mother made me grin uncontrollably. When I safely returned to the US, my phone was flooded with missed calls and unread messages from Tyler. Seeing him in trouble was amusing, but I ignored it all and turned off my phone. Exhausted, I managed one more task on my way home. I stopped by the courthouse office to submit the divorce papers. Goodbye, you two. My plan was perfect. When I got home, I collapsed into bed and slept like a log. I'm not sure how long I slept, but the persistent ringing of the landline woke me up. Thinking it was Tyler, I picked up the phone. It was from the embassy. The two of them were apparently having quite a tough time locally. According to the embassy, Tyler, after returning from the bathroom, was shocked and furious to find his mother left alone. Unable to reach me, he decided to head to the hotel on his own. I had given Tyler the itinerary, but he couldn't even make it to the shuttle stop and was panicking. When a local approached him with broken English saying, "I know the place, I'll take you there," they followed and ended up being robbed of all valuables, including cash and passports. Shivering with fear, they stood by the roadside and were eventually taken in by the police. From there, they were referred to the embassy. The embassy staff was astounded by their carelessness overseas. Asked if I could pick them up, I informed them that we were divorced and I had no obligation to retrieve them. The embassy staff, unable to say anything further, acknowledged and hung up. I had kept the divorce papers Tyler had thrown at me before. I never thought I would use them this way, but lacking the energy to drag out a mediation, I opted for this decisive short-term battle. Although I could have claimed compensation if I had fought, considering Tyler's spendthrift nature, I doubted he would pay me regularly, and frankly, I wanted to get rid of him as quickly as possible. When I submitted the divorce papers at the courthouse office, Tyler's years-old signature made me nervous, but they were accepted without issue, which was anticlimactic. Thus, with minimal effort, I successfully divorced. The travel expenses were substantial, but considering it as severance pay, it wasn't too painful. The next day, I moved into a new apartment alone. Planning the trip and the divorce simultaneously was challenging, but I had arranged to move into the new place from the first of the month. I bought new furniture and household items, and the things I took with me fit into just a few boxes. I left the wedding ring on the dining table and walked out of the house feeling refreshed. Apparently, Tyler and his mother managed to return home with the help of his father. After they returned, Tyler, furious, contacted me. "Oh, you made it back safely. Well done."
You left me behind and divorced me without my knowledge?
Left behind? Don't say such misleading things. I didn't leave you two behind. Your mother told me to go away. You were the one who threw the divorce papers at me. I can't oppose you or your mother. I was just following your lead.
You think such an excuse will hold? How much more do you want to embarrass me?
Tyler's anger was audible even over the phone as he kicked furniture around. Embarrassed? Why? I gave you the itinerary, didn't I? If you had followed it, you could have had a wonderful trip, just the two of you. It's not my fault you ended up needing the police and the embassy. It's because you both took the overseas trip too lightly. That's why I suggested a domestic trip. Stop blaming everything on me. Silenced by my rebuttal, Tyler couldn't respond. Consider the trip cost as severance pay. I don't need compensation. In exchange, never contact me again. It would only bring you further embarrassment.
What do you mean?
I heard you're a regular at a certain type of bar. You don't contribute a penny to the household, and I always wondered where your salary was going. Apparently there's a girl you're quite fond of. That girl? She actually despises you. She says it's creepy how you throw money around making bizarre requests. If you keep bothering me, I'll take this story to your company. The report from the private investigator I hired was more interesting than I expected. The girl Tyler was infatuated with actually disliked him. Considering Tyler's personality, this would be a severe humiliation, and if his company found out, it would be a major disgrace. Tyler toned down immediately and just said,
I understand,
before hanging up. Sometime later, as I was getting used to my new life, Tyler's father called. I have no grudge against my father-in-law, so I answered the call to bid him farewell, only to hear that he had divorced his wife. Although surprising, it made sense since both of us had suffered due to his wife's behavior. So I congratulated him. My father-in-law thanked me.
Thanks to the trip you planned, I was able to thoroughly investigate my wife's actions during the trip.
It turns out he also saw the trip as an opportunity and has secretly prepared for divorce, discovering that she had significantly misused his retirement funds.
Guess what she spent it on? Unbelievably, it was on beauty treatments and cosmetic medicine.
He laughed, and so did I. It seemed she had spent a fortune without anyone noticing any difference in her appearance. Truly, money down the drain. Left penniless and kicked out, his wife turned to Tyler, but now without my salary, Tyler had no money to spare for her and coldly brushed her off. She quickly aged from the shock of her doting son's turnaround. Tyler, unable to afford the rent for his apartment on his single salary, was forced to move. He now lives in a drafty, shabby apartment, but still can't give up his pretenses. At the end of our conversation, his father said,
Winnie, I'm sorry for the terrible 4 years you endured. Please, be happy.
And then he hung up. As the French actress Brigitte Bardot once said, I leave before being left. I decide. Now I live a leisurely single life, free from anyone's dictates. My work is going well, and I relish my stress-free life. The only regret I have is that I should have divorced sooner.